We'll start looking at your footballing career. So I've got a few stats written down here. Obviously, over 200 appearances, Barnsley, Crewe, and Rochdale. You've also got your legacy number for Barnsley Football Club, which is 843, which got presented to you recently. So what is your first memory of football?
I've probably got two sides to that, and I'll say one as playing. I mean, obviously, you know, as a child, I think you kick a ball about and stuff like that, and you listen to stories from family to say he was always kicking a ball about. But I think way back, and I'm going to say it was probably about 1971, was playing in the school team, in the primary school team, actually in goal, believe it or not. I think really because I was one of the youngest and there's nobody else to go in goal, so I got thrown in goal. So I can vividly remember that, you know, sort of playing in that time. But then from a, if you like, falling in love with football, wanting to kind of be a footballer, if you like, again around that time, you've probably seen the footage. 1971, family was were big Leeds fans. Yeah. We all used to go to the game, and my dad took me to, it was West Brom at home, and West Brom ended up winning the game 2-0, which cost Leeds the title. Jeff Hassel scored a goal that's miles offside, still offside to this day, by the way. It should never have been given. And I can remember asking my dad, why is everybody running on the pitch? Because there's a big pitching bays and a load of trouble. It's on YouTube, I know that. But that stands out in my mind as, like, you know, the whole sort of, people talk about when kids go to football for the first time and they see the pitch. I can't remember that. I can't remember, you know, the first time going to Ellen Road. But I can remember that day, probably because of what happened, because of the controversy and everything. So it stuck in my mind. And I always remember sort of thinking, wow, this is amazing, you know, all these people and all this noise, and those guys are out there playing football. So I'll have been around about probably 8, something like that, 7, 8, something like that.
So that leads me on to obviously my second question around your professional career. So started at Barnsley. What was that like, that transition going into kind of the academy, school to an academy environment?
It wasn't an academy in those days, trust me. The environment is nothing like it is now. Nothing like it is now.
In what sense?
I wouldn't change it, and I, you know, I'm not going to sit here and be a kind of all about my day kind of thing. But I think there were a lot of things that we did back then as apprentice professionals, which is what you were for 2 years, and how you were within the club and what was expected of you, that taught me and lads that I played with. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. A lot of values and beliefs and manners, if you like, just in general. Because you were, I'll be honest with you, you were almost cheap labour, is what you were. You know, so I left school. I literally had about a week of being at home, and then I started my apprenticeship in the summer across at Barnsley. Leeds to Barnsley in those days was a, you know, sort of 20-minute, 30-minute train ride. So, you know, I'm kind of gone from a school environment to out you go. You're working now, which is how it was viewed. But you went in as an apprentice professional, and in the summer, that very first summer, we spent probably the first 3 or 4 weeks digging the pitch up. Okay. Believe it or not. By hand, to put new drainage systems in. And you think about that now, you know, that would not happen. But we dug that. We dug the lines for the drains. They went in. We painted the ground. Again, you know, we sort of laugh about that. You know, probably the most lead-based paint you'd ever wished for in your life. Painting the whole of the walls outside red. When I go now, the old stand, the main west stand is still there, still bright red. And it just makes me chuckle when I think the amount of times I've thrown paint on that, you know. So you did all those jobs, anything that needed doing really. Football was quite secondary initially, and then when the season started, you were all given a couple of pros to look after, clean their boots, make sure their training kit was out in the morning, whatever they wanted, a cup of tea before training, whatever. You know, you were basically their lackeys. We cleaned the dressing rooms after training. You know, you'd all have your jobs to do, whatever it was. Take the kit away, mop the floors, clean the bath, you know, really clean the place out. And until the manager decided that was okay and it all looked all right, you stayed. You couldn't go home. So it was in your interest to do the job right the first time. And if you got it wrong, if you didn't do it right, or you tried to skimp, you got found out. So I think that's carried me through life. Lessons there that I learned at 16, 17, I definitely see I'm still got those values, if you like, and those little, as my missus would say, little sort of idiosyncrasies, where I don't like to be late. I like to do a job as well as I can do. If no matter what it is, I'm going to try and be the best to do that. I might not always attain it, but I'm going to try and be it. So I think it taught me a lot of that, and the resilience side. Look, it was quite a cruel environment at the time. It could be quite bullying, could be quite intense, could be quite intimidating. Some lads definitely struggled with that and probably fell by the wayside. I learned very early on that just do what you need to do, be as right as you can with people, do what's expected of you, because it was quite autocratic in those days, and you'll kind of be okay. And I think that's, again, when I look back, I think that's probably where I managed to make a career, as opposed to some of the other lads that I was with at the time, who were much better players than me. I'm going to say that, and we had quite a good crop. We had a good strong crop of 16, 17, 18-year-olds around that time. Lots of us went in and played in the first team, went off elsewhere, but some fell by the wayside because they couldn't kind of translate what they could do when not under pressure, when they were under pressure, when the senior pros screaming at you, telling you what to do.
You mentioned then that some of the values that have taught you from those experiences are missed today. How do we include that today from obviously that ethical point of view of ensuring that?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously society in general has changed. I think people's attitudes have changed. A lot of it, I'm going to say a lot of it for the good, without a doubt. I wouldn't say that you go back to that. Obviously not. But what I see now is when I look at, and I have been into one or two clubs, and I know like some young lads that have been pros at clubs, and they come out, and they've just kind of, for want of a better phrase, they've kind of had it handed to them, without real understanding of what they need to do to maintain that career, if you like, not the lifestyle. The examples of lads now that have not played any games in a first team that are, probably going to be millionaires. Come out of the game at 23, 24, and they've got £1 million in the bank because they've had good contracts. Listen, good luck to them, absolutely good luck to them. But I think, again, what I see with one or two, and I know a lad that quite well, and he does struggle with the understanding of values of, well, what am I going to do now? And, well, actually, you need to think about getting a job or getting something where you're a little bit more accountable to other people. Whereas I think now a lot of them are just not.
I think just to add to that, do you think it's more of an element of identity? So you see the digital culture, you see football players, young professionals, social media, they have this presence, have this identity. Do you think that is a factor that actually might impact them because everyone knows them as a footballer?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're earning big wage salaries. Too much too young potentially, and that could actually impact the longevity of their career. But it's very much aligned with who they are and what they're known as, and they don't know anything else.
I think it's spot on, Christy. I think the whole identity one's an interesting one, isn't it? When you look at what you are. When I was talking before about, I see my life in sort of three different frames. For many years it was, Wayne, he's a footballer, Wayne the footballer, Wayne, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it, because technically that was what I was, but that wasn't me as a person. I've always been, as I see it, just myself. But perceptions even back then were, he's a footballer kind of thing. So listen, and there was an element of, even back then, an element in the 80s of, there was a bit of glamour went with that, I'm sure. Yeah. Social media wasn't about, obviously, whereas now, like I say, I think that's a really good point. I think some of them are very good at building the profile, and there's a thirst for that, isn't there, with other people to sort of latch onto it, but there's got to come a point where if you're serious about having a career in the game, more so now because it's even more difficult, I think, because there's that many players. Then you have to make a choice at some point to go, well, that's all well and good, but I actually want to concentrate on playing the game and and having a career in it. I was fortunate. I had 10 years, just short of 11 years, as an apprentice stroke professional footballer. So and I'd never change that. You know, I was doing something that, for me, it didn't matter if I didn't get paid. I was doing something that I loved. You know, I'd played for nothing anyway. Pretty much did, really, with the money that we had. But whereas now, I'm not sure how many would seriously go, do you know what? Yeah, I just want to play. I just want to play the game, because of expectations. A lot of it, you know, agents getting involved. You know, they've got people doing the media for them, and it just becomes a real big animal, I think, where their identity, going back to it, is just so. What's the best way of describing it? So expanded and spread across so many things, rather than going, do you know what? Christie's a really good footballer, and look at, you know, he's played 30, 40 games this season, and he's back again next season. I'm not sure that some of them really have that drive to go on and do it, because, again, listen, great, fair play to them. You know, the only thing I ever say about my career is I do wish it was now, and I had 10 years with the money that's in the game now. Because if they can earn that money, fair play to them, you know.
You touched on something then, so again, we could relate to self-determination. So I get the impression you were very intrinsically driven, especially at a young age, to perform football. Yeah. You mentioned then that you would play football despite not being paid. Because of the external outcomes that we see within the modern game, could that potentially be an impact on player development in terms of that key term, longevity? Also, as well, just to add to that, you might see the academy system putting, you know, external pressures on people. Early specialisation has been a key element of the EPPP, which is the Elite Players Performance Plan. From a psychological angle, could that be a factor as well, just to kind of touch upon some of the things that you mentioned then?
Yeah.
And again, relate this to, obviously,
I would say
career.
Again, going back to
being young, you know. So now the kids in the academies and whatever, I mean, you know, they talk about pre-academy now, where they're actually looking at 3 and 4 year old kids. I don't think that's right. Kids can go into academies and listen, great environments. You know, I think it's depending on where you are, it can be a little bit too sterile for them and a little bit too. It's all amazing. They don't understand what else needs to go on. An example I'll give you is so my boy went through the academy system up to about 16, and he played played as well on a Sunday at times in a team, just local lads, and a few of them actually did really well out of it. And there's a lad that didn't really play that much, was at a club for a long time, from being about 8 to, I'm going to say, about 15, and went through all that, and basically just got cut at 15, and it absolutely destroyed the lad. He never played football again, and he was a good little player, and you know, it just completely destroyed him. So I think that experience for some youngsters, and especially the pressure that perhaps parents put on them, and you know, I see now in social media, there's you know, parents we're all proud of our kids, but they're putting pictures on of the little 7-year-old signed for, you know, whatever. It's like, well, he's 7, like, you know. The system was, way back, you had to be 14 before you could be affiliated to a football club. You signed what they called schoolboy forms then. And people say to me now, well, there's a lot more players come through now. I'm not sure on that. I'm really not sure. Because when I think back to sort of 14, 15, when I signed schoolboy forms at Barnsley, and I think about even just around this area, because these are all the teams that we played, you know. And again, you talk about early specialisation. A lot of these kids now, they can't play elsewhere, they can't play with their mates. That's had a knock-on effect, I think, with kids football, grassroots football. You know, I carried on playing with my mates until I was 16, which was what then the only time I couldn't play with my mates on a Sunday, which I used to do. So I'd play Saturdays for Barnsley, I'd play on a Sunday for my mates, was when I got to 16, which was fair enough, because that was getting serious then. It was when they were going to either offer you an apprenticeship or not. So we had other things going on, you know, we still had our childhood, we still played whatever we did, got up to mischief. Whereas now it's, you know, they train 3 and 4 times a week, 8 and 9 year old. I'm not sure how right that is, if I'm honest, from a moral point of view. I think if it was my lad now, and he was going through that, I'm not sure. I might be inclined to sort of try and rein him back a little bit. Maybe that's because I've got a different viewpoint on it compared to the average parent who just, you know, no disrespect to anybody, but they probably see their child in you know, Chelsea kit, going training or whatever, and it's brilliant. You know, it's great.
Your first appearance for Barnsley, can you reflect on that? Can you remember that experience?
I sort of progressed from first year apprentice to by the end of that first year. I trained a couple of times with the first team, which was great. You know, skinny little scrawny 17-year-old with all these grown men. And then the year after, again, I'd done quite well. I'd got in the reserve team, which, you know, Central League then was a real strong league. You know, you could be at United and you'd be playing. Well, we played United once at Barnsley, and Brian Robson played because he was coming back from injury, and there was, like, you know, massive interest in that. So you could be playing in a real strong environment. And I was holding my own. I was doing okay. I knew that. And I'd got pulled into the squad a couple of times. In those days, you'd come in on a Friday, and there'd be Norman Hunter. Okay. There'd be a board up in the home team dressing room, where the pros got changed, and there'd be a list there of squad for the first team, squad for the juniors, which was where generally I was playing. You know, I remember looking on the junior list, and it's a Friday afternoon. I'm like, why am I not playing? I was captain and everything. What's going on there? And then when the pros went, look at the other list, and I was at the bottom of that, so I was in the squad for that, squad of 15. You only had one sub in those days. So I went along. It was a home game. I was in the squad, but obviously didn't get picked. But just great to be in the squad. That happened a couple of more times, and then I wasn't in the squad. And then we towards the end of the season, and it was Fulham away, so it was 83. Was it 82, 83? So 82, 83. It was Fulham away, so we were travelling down, or the team was travelling down. We used to travel down on the day then. It was a night game, it was a Tuesday night game. So we were travelling in the morning, first thing. Going to go down to London to a hotel, stay in the hotel in the afternoon, have a kip or whatever, and then go to the game at night. So on the Monday, there I am on the list again. But I did notice I was a little bit higher up the list. I was something like, there's about 14, 15 of us going, and I was like 12 on the list. Didn't really read anything into it, but I can remember being a bit higher up the list. And at the time, there was a couple of injuries. So Norman Hunter was thinking of playing himself. He still used to join in training, played a couple of reserve games, but he'd not played in the first team for a while. And I think he was thinking of playing himself because we had to play, the right back was missing, the centre half was missing, somebody else was missing as well, midfielder was missing. So he was thinking he's going to have to put a couple of the young lads in and maybe play himself as well. And I remember getting in the lift at the hotel to go to the game, and as we got in the lift, me and the lad that I was sharing the room with, we were both young lads. And Norman got in the lift as well. So, you all right? Yeah, all right. Obviously Norman Hunter was one of my heroes because I watched him playing as a kid, so to now be like working with him was amazing. And a brilliant bloke as well, fantastic bloke. He's going, you all right? I said, yeah, great. Like, good. He said, because you're playing tonight. And I can remember that feeling of like, literally my ass just fell out. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, went a bit, like, right, yeah, okay. You'll be fine. Right, yeah, okay. And head was sort of spinning. Now, unbeknownst to me, he must have made that decision the day before because he'd let my brother, or he'd let my family know that I was going to be involved. Didn't say I was playing, but he said he's going to be involved the night after, me and another lad. So my brother and this other lad's, I think it was his dad, had driven down for the game. I didn't know this until after the game, whatever, but I can vividly remember in Craven Cottage, you know, in those days, and it's still the same in the corner where the old cottages, beautiful. Yeah, brilliant. And that's why I always look out for Fulham's results, bizarrely enough. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Fulham for that reason, because that's where I made my debut. But Fulham was strong, they were going for promotion that year. They actually missed out, I think, on the last day. Again, it's on YouTube, I think, away at Derby, there's a bit of a pitch invasion and whatever. But yeah, I played the game. I always remember being fine in the game, you know, quite nervous beforehand, but I was fine in the game. Played alongside Mick McCarthy, so Mick just looked after me all the way through. Played centre half. Another lad at my youth team, it was his debut that day as well. He played. We lost 1-0, but I can vividly remember sort of coming off the pitch and thinking, wow, like, you know, if nothing else, I've sort of not achieved a dream, but I've played one professional game in my life, and I never thought, I never knew what was going to come in the future, but just to be involved at that level, you know, amongst those players, you know, Barnsley got a real strong squad over 2 or 3 years there. Woodside was like just, people still say to me, what's the highlight of your career? and it's always that. Debut's always a highlight.
How did that work then after? So obviously you made your debut at Craven Cottage.
The next game, so we played on the Tuesday away at Fulham. The next game was Blackburn at home. So I played centre half on the Tuesday, and then because the right back was still suspended, a lad called Joe Joyce, the other centre half was back after suspension, so he came back in and I played right back against Blackburn at home. We drew that 1-2-2, and then I played a further game. I played the last. I didn't play then for the next sort of 3 or 4 games. It was towards the end of the season. I think I was on the bench for one, if I remember rightly. And then I played the last home game. We played Charlton at home, and I played centre half in that game, and that was sort of my first sort of 3 appearances that year, which was, you know, for me it was just like unbelievable. I got offered a new contract in the summer, a little bit more money. Funny enough, I got called in the summer, and in those days when you finished, not like now, you finished and then you probably didn't go back into the club for another 5-6 weeks until you started pre-season. But I got a phone call from the secretary saying, "Oh, can you come in? The manager wants to see you." I'm like, "Oh, what have I done?" He first thought, "Oh, what have I done? I'm in trouble." Goes in and it wasn't. He was like, he wanted to talk to me about a new contract. I think because I played against Charlton, and Charlton had actually come in and asked about signing me, and he was like, "You're not going." I didn't really want to go anyway. I don't think I'd have gone at 18 to London, but it was quite nice that another club had sort of thought, well, yeah, we'd quite like to sign him. He said, "So, going to give you another year on your contract, put your money up a little bit, and you'd be a full member of the squad next year."
So was there any funny characters, any personalities that you played with that that we recognise today? Or
you'd recognise Mick McCarthy.
Yeah.
You'd recognise Mick. I mean, Mick was a local lad, Barnsley lad.
Could you see him being a coach in
Yeah.
terms of being a manager? Did he always have that presence, that leadership?
Yeah, Mick was a strong character. Strong character in the dressing room. So him and a lad called Ian Evans were the centre half pair. Now Ian had come from Crystal Palace, played for Wales, had a real good career. Got a bad leg break with George Best, broke his leg actually. Was never quite the same player, and came up to Barnsley. And so Ian was player coach. I mean, again, it's funny. You're talking about player numbers. When I look now at, I was looking at a picture. In fact, I think it was yesterday, and it was City's under-8s or something like that. And the backroom staff for the under-8s were stood behind the squad, and there was like 9 people. So I'm trying to work out. There's probably a couple of coaches, whatever, but there's 9 people stood behind them. So professional football back then. And talking about Barnsley, we had the manager, Norman Hunter. Ian Evans was player coach. We had a guy called Bobby Collins who did the reserves and the youth setup. So he was my main sort of coach who I had. And then we had a physio who also doubled up as the kit man. So we had 4 staff. That's literally it. So, but Mick and Ian were good pals anywhere on the pitch, good pals off the pitch. Ian was a really good coach. So when Mick, I think he finished playing at Millwall and then got the Millwall manager's job, it didn't surprise me whatsoever because I could see that in him. He was a leader. He was a strong character. Had strong views on the game, on what he wanted. Was brilliant with young players. Taught me a lot. Put a lot of I saw him the other week when we had that the Legacy Day. And I'd not seen him for probably going on 30 years or something like that. And he didn't remember that I'd made my debut alongside him. Why would he? Because he'd played that many games. But he remembered the game. Once I told him, he remembered the game. And he's still the same sort of guy now as he was back then. Very sort of humble. Was asking about me, what am I doing? And he was like that as a player. He wanted to know what you were like as an individual and as a player. So it didn't surprise me when I went into management.
Just to add to that, I presume there was a big drinking culture there. Obviously, when you were playing, that's very different today.
I don't care what anybody says. That was the game. You were, I never really drank as a kid. Why would I? But obviously everyone has a bit of a sneaky drink at 14, 15. I never did. I drank, never smoked. I talk about my debut. The only time I ever smoked was after my debut, and that was a cigar because it was a tradition. You made your debut, Mick, you sit and have a cigar. Mick, Ian Evans and a couple of others would sit and have a cigar after the game. And he's plonked this cigar in my mouth, gone, smoke that. And I'm like, I'm sitting there going, I have no idea what to do with this.
You become part of the clan, you become part of the group, you know.
You get accepted in.
Yeah.
You get accepted in. Bit by bit, you have to earn your stripes, if you like. You know, you get accepted in. They see that you can play a little bit. They see that you've got a bit of resilience about you. You know, the game could be quite violent back then. You know, sometimes you had to look after yourself before somebody else looked after you, if you understand what I mean. So, you know, if people saw that you were up for that fight, if you like, then you got accepted in. So it was a bit like a cult, if I'm honest with you. Is a football dressing room, probably still now, but more so back then. And a bit, I know people have likened it, but I think it's very like a military environment, in that you're very insular. You know, you stick together. You know, dressing rooms change, but like I say, I can bump into lads. I saw Mick and a lad called Trevor Ayler, who played way back then. First time I've seen him in years. First time I've seen me. Within a few minutes, it's like you're in the dressing room again, because you're reminiscing, you're talking about stuff. I saw a lad last year when I went to Swansea to do the commentary. I've not again played with, didn't see for years. I see lads now. You know, I'm making a bit of a conscious effort, if I'm honest with you, to try and hook up with lads that I've not seen for a while, and nothing changes because you've got that bond. You've been through it. It's a little bit like probably you and I in 20 years' time, if I'm still alive. You know, we work together and we might bump into each other, not see each other, and you go, how are you doing? You just do. You have that connection. So I think back then, more so, some of the stuff that you went through and almost the initiations that you had to go through and the testing of your character decided if you were going to be one of the group.
It very much relates to, I can imagine, again, thinking about the story that you mentioned, was the element of masculine culture. And we talked about identity then. You know, you see these issues today about people fearing coming out in terms of their sexuality, people afraid to talk about mental health, and it's only recently that we talked about that. From what I'm gathering, you mentioned alcohol, cigars, you never drank, but all of a sudden you're part of the clan and you have to do that to fit in. It becomes a very much of a masculine group where to express maybe yourself, it gets challenged in a way, but you want to be part of that because it's what you want to do. You want to be a footballer.
I relate to the week. You and I went out, dinner with the Fuse went out, and you and I had a couple of non-alcoholic drinks. Yeah. If I had gone out back then, anybody with us would have gone out and gone, stood at the bar and gone, I'll have a Coke. It would have been, what? They got absolutely slayed. Yeah. Get him a beer. Yeah. You know, having a beer.
I don't think that's football. I think that's British culture, though.
Yeah,
there's very much British culture. Again, football's kind of an element of that, but that's British culture in a way that you have to drink alcohol to have and to have a good time as well. When in reality, you don't necessarily need it. It's just part of it's a habit really that we've had.
I mean, the masculinity side of it. Look, I can definitely when I look back, I can definitely think of probably 3 or 4 lads that I played with in various clubs that I didn't think at the time, but I now know it, that they are gay. So what? You know, makes no difference what they did with that, but they would never ever have thought about coming out in those days. Absolutely never would do. Now, like I say, now it's what does it matter? It doesn't matter whatsoever. But back then, the masculinity in the dressing room, you know, I said before, there was a bit of violence in the game and stuff. You know, you had to look after yourself. You had to sometimes do some things that perhaps, on reflection now, you're not that proud of. You know, I've seen fights in dressing rooms. You know, real gruesome fights where it's really kind of got. I've seen it on the training pitch. You know, now there's a bit of a kerfuffle. Somebody the other week was it Richarlison and Neymar, sort of Brazil training, having a little bit of a pushing each other, and there's a big kerfuffle about what's going on. That's nothing, absolutely nothing to what, you know, some of the stuff I've seen on pitches and at half time in games, you know, because that was the environment. Now I think it's not, because the culture's different. You know, the way that players are treated is different, and I think that's better. I do think that's better. You know, sometimes I've thought about it. I've likened it to, like, at times, almost like illegal dogfighting. Do you know what I mean by that? Almost like, if you think, sort of 20 lads, all, you know, fit, healthy, competitive athletes, which, you know, we were, you know, all quite aggressive in the way they played the game, there's bound to be some fallouts. There's bound to be something that irritates somebody. And so almost when that comes to a head, it literally was, you know, again, I'd seen managers step aside and go, get on with it, get it out of your system. And like two dogs going at it. Honestly.
So obviously in terms of your playing career, we mentioned Barnsley, Crewe Alexandra, Rochdale as well. And then did you go down the leagues you mentioned Buxton then?
So I came out of like full-time football at Rochdale. I did have the chance to go and do another 2 year. I got offered a 2 year contract at Scarborough, who were then what is now League 2 but League 4. But I was getting married. My life was sort of a bit different back then. People had said to me, at some point you have to get a job, you do know that, don't you? And I just thought, well, maybe now's the time to bite the bullet. I can still play part-time and get paid for that, still play football, but I need to try and find some sort of a, you know, again, what I was saying before about moving to a different frame in my life, a working career to support, you know, my life and what was potentially going to be my family back then.
So it's just, I suppose I get the feeling that you had to learn how to potentially maybe drop your ego, drop who you were, change your way of life, way of thinking about things. Did you get support at all? Was from, you know, PFA, Professional Football Association, mentors? Was there anything there that, did you speak about this? You know,
no,
was this a thing that we talk about at that period?
Again,
or
nothing, you know, nothing was ever like spoken about or spoken to me about that end of career transition and what it may or may not mean to you as an individual. The only time I started talking about anything along those lines, and nothing, you know, with you know, my wife at the time, partners, anything like that, as I went on, I ended up getting divorced. The only time I ever really got into a discussion where I started actually realising a few things and thinking about things differently was, so when I was 40, I got diagnosed with bowel cancer, and obviously kind of went through a bit of a process with that. I had my son was 9, my daughter was about 18 months old. It was a real kind of, you know, I'm not going too far into it, a real kind of life moment of like, wow, I need to get myself right here, or I'm not going to see my kids grow up. Anyway, you know, obviously I'm still sat here, so I'm kind of okay. Got through all that. But after about 3 years of that, I'm not going to say I had a breakdown, but I definitely had a moment where I was talking to one of the nurses that was sort of looking after my aftercare and stuff like that. And I remember we just sort of sat there, and I'd been thinking about lots of things about past life and stuff like that, where I was with my life at that particular time. And she literally just put a hand on my hand like that, and she went, "Are you okay?" And I just burst out into tears. And we had about an hour's worth of discussion of you know, this. And what she said to me at the time, she said, well, for the first time ever, she said, you're actually going through what nearly everybody who ends up with cancer goes through, where they have this moment of, why me? This is so unfair. She said, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because I was always, so when I got diagnosed, my mindset was almost like the footballer. Well, I'm injured, so what's the diagnosis and what's my rehab period? How long before I can play again? Right. And that's the way I looked at it. Yeah. So when they said, well, you're probably about 6 months, and then, you know, you'll have to sort of, you know, I had a stoma bag, and then after 18 months we'll reverse it and we'll do this and that. So that was in my mind, that was all I thought of. So I never even thought about the consequences of, well, you know, I could die here particularly. Obviously people around me were really worried and stuff like that. But I was like, nope, I'll get myself fit, I'll get to the gym, I'll do whatever I need to do. But I sort of had this moment then of sort of 3 years later of, okay, why have I got this? Why is it affecting my life so much? And then off the back of that, other stuff started coming out about like, well, I'm really aggrieved about how my life, why I'm here now in this, anyway, why am I still not involved in football? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not with still my first wife? Why am I not, you know, why are my kids, do you know what I mean? All sorts of things started coming out. But again, there were, until the hospital gave me some help on that, there was, I suppose I could have gone and looked for it, but it wasn't in my mind at that time. It's almost like probably pushed to the back of it, because, and I think when I came out of football, you just go, right, well, I'm a bit pissed off with all that, but put it all there. And I'm like, right now I've got to try and concentrate on this.
Do you feel like it's the worst and best thing that could potentially happen to you, just because obviously it was a bit of an epiphany of who you are, what your worth is in the world. We see ourselves as enclosed within this footballing culture, and football is all we know, and then all of a sudden you kind of, it's a terrible thing, don't get me wrong, but you start to branch out and really think deeply about who you are and what your purpose is.
That was definitely, I mean, that's 17 years ago now. That was definitely a moment for me around that time where I actually did start thinking a little bit more about self-awareness and what I actually, well, not so much who am I, but who do I actually want to be? What do I want to do? You know, what do I want to kind of stand for in my life, if you like? And I'm not going to say, well, I'm saying, so 17 years ago when I was diagnosed, that will have been about 14 years ago when it all kind of came to a head, really. And I started getting some help and talking to people about it and almost putting things in some sort of order. I'm not going to say it was an easy process, because it wasn't, and it's still a bit of an ongoing thing, definitely an ongoing thing. But I'm more liable to sort of go and seek help and talk about it and actually try and understand it, and maybe, again, probably because the last 4 or 5 years, think, why am I thinking like that? Well, what is there any research out there that tells me why that might be? Is there something that I can look at? You know, is there somebody else who I could talk to that's maybe gone through that? And again, sort of tying it into a little bit of what we're talking about with the football and people coming out of the game, I think that's where there's a massive link missing of, you know, there is more help now and there's more being pushed forward, but I think what I would like to see would be clubs actually, I think, is it Palace that have just done it? They've actually done a thing where for 3 years they're going to actually support the lads who come out of the game or leave their club, which I think is brilliant.
An exit strategy.
An exit strategy, but actually go and talk to them, not go, well, we're here for you, because 9 out of 10 won't come to you. But if you go to them, you might actually get them to speak to you and let them understand, look, you can expect this. This is what's going to happen to you. This is how you will think. You will be really worried. You will be like concerned about what you're going to do. You will be thinking, am I going to get another contract? What if I don't get another contract? Where do I play then? Who do I go and see about playing? And I think going back with it for myself, that was where I started putting things a little bit in perspective, understanding it a little bit more, you know, letting go of some of the anger. I'll talk to you, you know, but so when I got released by Rochdale, the guy who was the manager, longest story short, he got the manager's job halfway through the end of the second season because the previous manager moved to another club. He was the physio. He came in. He was an all right guy, but he wasn't the brightest. But he was fortunate, and we had quite a good group. We had quite a good side. We did all right, and he got the job. And I kept saying to him, I need to know what's happening next year because I'm getting married. So there's a contract there for you. He kept telling me he was going to get a contract. You know. Anyway, in the end, he reneged on it with about 4, and same with about 5 or 6 others. And that's what kind of made me really angry. Because if he'd just been honest with me and said, I'm not going to keep you, I might well have gone and done another 2 years contract somewhere else or whatever. But anyway, years later, I'm coaching non-league, and we turn up at a ground, and as I'm walking in, this guy's walking down the corridor towards me. And he's obviously a lot older now, and clearly doesn't recognise me, but I recognise him. And I was so furious, like as soon as I saw him, I was like angry. And I can't remember if he even said anything to me, but I just wasn't having him whatsoever. Like, you know, I wouldn't engage with him, and I was really pissed off at him still. And I remember coming away thinking, that's 20 odd years ago. Why are you so, you know, why have you not let that go? That's not right, that. Yeah. And I've seen him since, and he still doesn't know. Yeah. I think he doesn't put the two together, because again, why would he? But I started thinking, well, I've got a few little pockets of things like that, a little bit of resentment, anger, disappointment. I need to kind of work out why that is and get those out of me and almost make peace with myself, but with other people as well. It's a totally different game, you know.
So like it's for you, being more present is kind of the key term there. So What I sense is a lot of footballers as well as yourself, they look at the past. So you mentioned that anger and that emotional element of looking at the past, and also that insecurity of what the future might hold, especially as being a footballer. I think for you it's probably reflecting on those and just being more present in yourself and thinking about what's happening now rather than
what's around me.
Yeah, and thinking forget that, focus on me now and develop
there would have been
emotional awareness from that.
I won't say when or try and put it out, but like you asking me to do this, I'm more than happy to come and do this with you, with anybody, you know, whatever I can do to help anybody now. And again, my missus sometimes says to me, you can say no to people sometimes, you know. But I don't view it like that now. I think no, there's been so many times in my life where I've said no or I've let people down that do I want to kind of make up for it? Maybe that's something else I need to look at. But a few years ago, I would have probably not done this on the basis that I can't be bothered. You know, what for? Whereas now I'm thinking, well, not about me. If this helps you, if you know something that good comes out of this, then great, I'll do it. Likewise with a few other things I've been asked recently that I probably should turn down doing because you know I've got loads of stuff on, but I don't. I think from being somebody who's quite insular, quite selfish, I want to, like I say, in the present now, I want to be a bit more aware of what's going on around me, more aware of other people's needs, if you like, and that's possibly why I've headed down the route I'm heading now with teaching and stuff, you know.
So let's talk about your coaching then. So obviously your playing experience, your experience working in other industries, transferable skills into coaching. Have you adapted the way that you coach? I presume that you have from obviously the stories that you've gave. Do you want to give a bit of an overview on how coaching happened? You mentioned Barnsley, but that transition into obviously a coaching career, expectations, behaviours, dealing with people, managing people.
Yeah, like I say, I think I became serious about wanting to coach when I finished playing when I was at Crewe. You know, I was really fortunate with having Dario Gradi as the manager who you know, you look at that club now. I've got a lot of affection for Crewe. You know, that's great times there. Won a promotion, getting some great lads. Obviously, there was stuff that came out recently in the last few years with the Barry Burnell thing, and I was there at the time. Again, you know, that was something else that kind of caused me some real reflection and thoughts, as it did with a few of us, to be honest. But if I talk about what the club, being at that club did for me, it definitely sparked my interest in wanting to coach. Because I say, Dario was at that time trying to get the whole thing off the ground of produce our own players, you know, bring them through very early stages. So didn't have people, he was doing most of it. Started asking one or two of us to do some sessions, which I enjoyed doing. You know, learnt a lot from him, really good coach. So that kind of piqued my interest, thinking, yeah, when I finish playing, I want to coach. So when I did eventually finish playing full time, like I say, it's funny because when I look back, fortunate because generally where I was coaching, we had some good players. So good players make you a good coach, I think, or can make you look like a good coach. I probably thought I was a really good coach at the time, like you do when you're young. You think you know everything. You just do, don't you? You think you know everything, and probably because I'd played as well. Well, this is what I used to do. This is what I've seen done. This is work when I was at this club or whatever. But then when you start looking at it realistically, you know very little, and unless you're willing to keep developing and learning and expanding your mind and looking at new things and seeing different ways, then you stay as you are. And even now, you know, people say, oh, you've got a lot of experience coaching. I'm not sure about that. I've got a lot of years of coaching. I still think there's so many things that I'm not very good at, and there's so many things that I can keep learning, and I'm glad about that. I mean, even you know, last night I'm sat reading something, I'm thinking, wow, I never even thought of it that way. I'll try that, or I'll try and can I use that? So what I am now as a coach is different to what I was when I first came. Like I say, quite autocratic, very, no, do it this way. After that, very kind of, I wouldn't say I was too aggressive at like shouting at people and giving a bollocking or whatever. I've never really been like that, but very much, right, well, he's not doing it, so he can get off.
Northwich, where you're currently coaching at the moment, how do you educate yourself to become better?
Reflect on what I do a lot. Reflect on that's an interesting point as well, because again, so a couple of years ago we'd had a real good sort of 18 months or so. The team was playing really, really well. I think we lost 2 games. Till COVID hit, we were 8 points clear at the top of the league, 11 points clear of 3rd, so we were going to get promoted. And the team were good. The team was pretty much running itself. A lot to do other than the odd sort of thing. You almost just keep it going. Make sure that training's right, make sure that everything's right around and stuff like that. The team was pretty much managing itself and playing really well. But in my mind, I was like, I was having a bit of a bad time of like really doubting myself, thinking, why is this happening? Why is it so good? And I'm not actually. I don't think I'm that good here. I don't think I'm giving the players enough. And then, I'd go into a game on. I can remember one vividly. Went into a game on the Saturday, and I'm like really sort of edgy with myself and thinking, I wasn't, but thinking I'm just not saying the right things, or I'm coming across, indecisive or whatever. Really worried about this, and we ended up winning I think we won 7 or 8-0, something like that. Played really well. We had a few games like that year. Coming off afterwards thinking, oh God, that wasn't very good. What have I not done right there? Just couldn't get my head around what was going on. So I was doubting myself a lot. Whereas last year, where we had some bad patches because we'd gone up a league and we had to adjust to the levels and stuff, and I sort of, this sounds really strange, I sort of enjoyed that more, if you understand what I mean, of trying to work out why the team wasn't performing as well, but yet I'm thinking, I'm fairly certain I'm doing everything that I need to do. And again, I've talked about it, I do reflect quite a lot on that. I do sort of sit down and think, could I have done that better? Or actually no, oh yeah, that was good. Or right, maybe next time I need to do this. But yet when it was going really well, I had doubts. When it wasn't, I had no doubts whatsoever. I'm almost like, well, we'll be fine with this, we'll sort this out. And that's where I am now with it, where I've looked at last season a lot, spent a lot of time looking at it, watched a lot of the games back, looked at all the GPS data, all the statistical data and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, right, what I saw last year where we need to improve in that particular area, we can definitely do that because we've got the right players and right individuals and right people who will have the right mindset. I just need to work out a way to put some sessions together to do that. And I think as long as I'm still capable and willing, I think that's a big one, willing to put that work in on myself and go, right, what do I need to do to give the players the best chance, then I'll carry on coaching. The minute that I'm not willing to do that and put those hours in, if you like, and look at it and try and work out why, then I think whether it's me or anybody else, I think that's the time you have to stop coaching.
Just on that, so I get the impression there's a bit of a fear element of not stretching your boundary, getting too comfortable. You mentioned winning and feeling a little bit insecure about that. Could you flip that and say, well, that's a positive, because it shows from my perspective that you like to strive, you like to do more, and there's always more that can occur from that.
So again, at that time,
talk about seeking help, whatever. So I did actually seek some help on that, because I couldn't work out why it was and why I was feeling so almost down about myself and what was going on. And it's actually quite a common theme amongst coaches. You get to a certain point where, whether you're elite level or whatever, but where you just doubt yourself. You just have doubts about the knowledge that you have, and is that the right knowledge? Is what I know right, or is there something that I don't know that I now need to find out and know? And I think that was the thing that resonated with me. It's like, yeah, I think now I'm at the point where I constantly want to find out what I don't know, and whether that will impact me or influence me positively or negatively. I want to try and find that out. So yeah, I see where you're coming from with it, and I do feel that I don't ever want to get to a point where I do, back in my mind again, how I might have been in the past, think I sort of know it all and I'm comfortable, because that's not what motivates me now. What motivates me now with it, with coaching, is exactly that. I mean, some people say, 6 years is a long time at the same club, are you not bored, are you not? No, I'm not. because I like the people that I'm with, I like the club, like the whole thing about it. Would I go somewhere else? At this moment in time, no, but I think, in my mind, I'm thinking there might be one more thing that I would want to do somewhere else, somewhere different, whether that be a step up or whatever. You know, I think I'm capable of coaching at a higher level, and that's not me being, you know, egotistical or blowing my own trumpet. I just think I am capable, because again, I see a lot of coaches at higher levels and they're almost settling for what they are. And I know right now I've still got the mindset, probably even more so, where there's a little bit of a fear. Maybe that's something that drives me, I don't know, of like, I don't want to stand still. I want to always be trying to find something out. I want to maybe put myself in a situation where people go, I'm not sure you can cope with that, and see if I can cope with it, you know. Whether that'll come or not, I don't know.